Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining us for this webinar today from wherever it is you are Zooming in from. Before I kick it over to our presenters, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, so if you do need to leave at any point, we will send around the recording via email once we have processed it today. If you have any questions for the presenters, feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel to ask them questions. We'll have some time at the end of the presentation, and we'll also be checking those throughout in case anything pops up as we're discussing the topics for today. And if we're unable to address your question live, feel free to follow up with your placement associates via email or shoot them a message in Candidate Connect. And without further ado, I'll kick it off to our presenters.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. First thing I want to do is go over what we'll be talking about, and then we'll kind of start going through the sections one by one. So first, we're going to talk about what the timeline has looked like this hiring season, as well as just what the market has looked like and how that is similar or different from past years. Next, we will do a quick review of candidates' files here with us at Carney Sandoe and what we would recommend adding to your file if you have not added it already. After that, we will talk about after you do receive a referral, what the next steps would look like, whether that's a pending or active referral. And then lastly, we will jump into the Q&A. And with the Q&A, you can feel free to add your questions anytime throughout anytime we're talking, anytime a question comes up, but we will just circle back to all of them at the end.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Courtney, and Jake and I are just so thankful for you taking your time to chat for a few minutes, and hopefully we can answer some questions and ease some concerns about the hiring season. I'm going to briefly just talk about the timeline and what the year has looked like thus far. It's actually been a very, very busy year, and I say actually only because we had no idea what it was going to look like after a year of pandemic. And of course, we're still in one here, and schools have been hiring and actively hiring. And we, as of end of April, we've seen a huge bump in positions compared to last year, and they are still coming in. So if you're still searching at this point, just know that it seems as though the hiring season is far from over, and you will continue to be receiving referrals and getting updates from us well into the summer, it's looking like. So we're still in the thick of it.
Absolutely. I'll also add that thinking about the market in general, in past years, it has been we've seen busier January, Februarys. So that might be part of the reason that if you have worked with us in the past, you might have seen busier those winter months, but this year it just has been pushed later. So that's what we're seeing. And we still expect that things will quiet down a bit as we get into the summer, as school administrators want to go on their summer vacations as well, especially after the year we've had. But we do expect that there's going to be a lot happening over the next couple months.
Great. Julie, sorry, do you mind just putting up the slide real quick so I can make sure we're not skipping anything just with the overview?
Sure, one sec.
Thank you so much. And again, feel free to write any questions in, and we will absolutely get to them. Great. So in terms of the CSNA profile, we just wanted to have a moment here to quickly review what what it looks like and what we need on our end. Obviously, the most important document is an updated resume. And we're always happy to look over your resume. So if you have questions or you're editing or looking to add a few things, feel free to email it to us, and we're always happy to send along some comments. Additionally, so one topic that can get a little bit tricky is if a candidate is searching confidentially, it's difficult to ask a current employer for letters of recommendation. And that is one big piece of the file, generally 3 to 5 letters of recommendation. So if you're searching confidentially, it's okay not to have them right now. Of course, the school that is interviewing you will need them eventually. And it is getting later in the season, so that eventually would be not too far from now because of that. But if you haven't moved forward with the school yet, so you're not ready to tell your current employer, it's okay to hold off on that. So if you are openly searching and your school knows, then we definitely recommend getting 3 to 5 letters. It's okay if they're not all from your current employer. If you were at a school before your current place of employment and you wanted to get a letter from them, that's great. I think it's great to have a diverse file, so letters from multiple people. It's generally preferred if letters come from not peers at a school, but from either a department chair or a head of school. So those tend to be the best sources for letters.
Yeah, and then the last document I would talk about would be the personal statement. And just to share a bit about that, I kind of think the resume should show schools why you're qualified for a role, what it is about your background that shows that you have the experience for it. And then the personal statement is really your chance to show among qualified candidates why the school might want you in particular and what you have to bring to any school community. It should work for any school. And then in the cover letter, you can really talk about kind of what makes you a specific fit or what you have to specifically add to a school community or to a specific role. Next, we will kind of go ahead and talk about the steps after receiving a referral. And Julie, I think you can go back to me and Courtney if that works for you. Thank you. So there's really 2 types of different referrals that you'll be getting from Courtney and I. The first one is a direct active referral, which means that the school is getting your full dossier of materials from us. And anytime that happens, I'd always recommend going into Candidate Connect, clicking on the referral, and for every single job, there will be some follow-up directions included in that position description that you can find there. Usually it will be sending a cover letter to someone, completing some online application, or it might even be directions from the school that you don't need to follow up. But always following those are the best steps to making sure that you are best on the school's radar and that they know that you're interested. So that is kind of the main way to follow up on an active referral. If we send you a pending referral, which we'll do for a variety of reasons, you can also find that in Candidate Connect. The most important thing for those is doing everything you would do for an active referral, following up with the school, et cetera, but also making sure to click Send My Materials if it is a school you're interested in, or decline if you're not interested in it. And even clicking decline, me and Courtney don't mind. We just want to know kind of what you're looking for, what you're thinking about, because that will help us better figure out what to send you going forward.
Yeah, no, I would definitely second that. I think some people are hesitant to decline a referral because they think that, we might not send additional referrals if you keep declining, but that's not the case at all. It actually really helps us direct future referrals so we can get a sense of the types of schools that you're interested in, the types of schools that you're not interested in. One thing I would add in terms of the follow-up process, a lot of schools, an increasing number of schools, are now using ATS systems or application tracking systems. And so it can be frustrating, but some schools are asking that you not only, send your materials through Carney Sandoe, which is really just us sending your materials, but in addition to that, filling out the application. And it's because they're using these systems and that's where they're keeping all of their information. So if you see those, we'll spell it out in the notes, but some schools, it is kind of like a double process, and we apologize for the inconvenience, but that's just, new systems that schools are using, and that's just how they're doing it right now.
Great. Jumping into the question and answer section of the webinar, we have one person who asked, can you clarify differences between personal statement and teaching philosophy, for example? And I think the thing about the personal statement is it really is a very general document, and it can be something that is different for every person, whatever you want to share with the school. Some people have teaching philosophies that they've already written, and if you want to use that or adapt that and share it and use that as your personal statement, you're absolutely welcome to. The only thing I would add is that if there's other things you really want to include and want people to know about who you are, things like your passion for coaching or your passion for diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives, making sure to include those different components that show all the things you have to bring to a school beyond your philosophy, that can still be helpful there too. but definitely feel free to use a teaching philosophy or adapt it as a personal statement. And if there's other things that you wouldn't typically include in a cover letter, but you do think they're important for schools to know and really do make you stand out, you've traveled to 100 countries, or you were in the Olympics as a bobsled or something, whatever it is, you can feel free to include anything that's just interesting and that might draw the eye there as well.
Yeah, there was one other question that looks like it was sent in before the webinar, and someone asked about negotiating and when to bring up salary when you're speaking with the school. We tend to recommend not to begin the conversations around salary until you're closer to the offer stage. Schools can be turned off by it. And it doesn't really come into play until at least the finalist kind of part of the search. And again, schools just really aren't ready generally to talk about that until they're closer to actually making the hire. So we do recommend waiting on that.
Yeah, another question that came in before the webinar is, if we get an offer, but we'll be interviewing soon for another school, how do we ask for additional time to decide and/or negotiate? And that's kind of another question about this later stage in the process. So what I would say there is, first of all, if a school gives you an offer on the phone, you never need to make that decision on the spot. You can always say, hey, can I take some time to think about this? And then you can always reach out to Courtney and I, because every situation is distinct based on how much time you have between the offer and when your next interview is scheduled, or how far you are in the process with another school, or kind of what's going on there. And we can talk about, based on kind of where you're at in your offer, how it makes sense to move forward. So just reach out to us at that point, and we can help you handle whatever situation you're in individually.
Yeah, it's just like Jake said, it's, always remember that we're not only in touch with candidates, but in touch with the schools on the searches. So we oftentimes can, make a call to the school, help with the entire process, not just negotiating, but of the timeline. We recognize it can be really tricky and stressful, and really kind of, it's just touchy. So we're really happy to step in and help with that process.
Another question we got is, do we work with schools outside the United States? And the answer is yes, we do work with schools outside the US each year, but the majority of schools we work on are in the US. So definitely just keep us posted on what your geographical preferences are, especially if they're changing at all. And we can keep you posted on jobs wherever you are looking, just based on how broad your preferences are and where the schools that we happen to be working with are. We'll try to send you as many referrals as we can, but in some places we'll have more than others. So in the US, we happen to work with more schools than abroad.
Jake, do you mind reading if there's any additional? My internet is going in and out, and I lost the email that had them, and I'm happy to answer any of them, but do you mind reading if there's additional questions that came in before?
Yeah, here's another question is, what is the best way to follow up with a school after you've done all of your interviewing with them?
So we always recommend sending a thank you note, and I would say send an individual thank you note to each person who you interviewed with. I think they really, really appreciate that. And it's great to touch on things that they said, to show that you were listening and interested in the conversation. So yeah, definitely send a thank you note. And generally speaking, if you're, that far along in the process, once you do that, they should be in touch pretty quickly after, even if it's to say, we're right in the thick of it, we'll be in touch in a week or 10 days. If you've sent thank you notes and then you haven't heard anything and it's been a week or 10 days, again, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to inquire with the school to see where they are in the process.
Definitely. Another question we got is, what are the factors that schools consider in sponsoring visas?
Jake and I talk about this a lot because it's so tricky. So independent schools, obviously, since they are independent, can kind of do all different things, which is great in one sense, but really challenging in another, because there's really no rhyme or reason in regards to who will sponsor a visa and when and why. We definitely see independent schools sponsoring visas. It is not something that it happens all the time, but it certainly happens at least a handful of times a season. It is a trickier search if you need a visa, which I think most candidates who are in that position, we talk to them about, so they know that going in. timing is also tricky. So right now it's late in the year for a school to sponsor a visa. Again, it's not unheard of. We've seen it happen at this point in the season, but it's less common just because schools are very anxious to wrap up searches and the visa process is time consuming. And so they tend to be a little bit nervous about doing it this late in the season. We are here to support you. We will, again, help in whatever way that we can. And oftentimes what candidates will do if they're, starting a search and it's close to summer, they might see what happens over the summer, but then really focus their efforts on the fall for the following season, because it's a lot easier for a school to do, in the fall or early winter than late spring, or I'm sorry, spring, early summer.
Yeah. Another question we got is, how can language teachers who are, and this is, how are language teachers who are not favorite teachers compared to something like STEM or humanities secure competitive offers? And I would just push back on that to start and say that we do see that language teachers are one of the higher need areas for schools every year. They're really looking for so many language teachers, and I think that so that's kind of the place to start with that question, and then I would go from there and also say that to best secure competitive offers, again, just reach out to us. We're happy to help with that whole offer stage when you get to that point in the process, and we really want to be here to help however we can with that.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is schools tend to look at a handful of things when they're making an offer. Some schools have kind of a established pre-existing salary scale that is really, it's just based on numbers and facts. How many years have you been teaching? What is your education level? So it's really like punch in X, Y, and Z and out pops the salary. So that's a way that some schools keep it completely uniform across the board. Other schools don't use that type of system, and it's more up for debate, more negotiable. But things that tend to come into play then are still years experience in education and location. So places that have a higher cost of living tend to pay higher than places that have a lower cost of living. So yeah, even though, all schools handle it differently, there's generally a number of factors that all schools consider. And again, always feel free to reach out and we can walk you through that process.
Definitely. One more question we got, and we were speaking to this a little bit earlier, but I still think I think we can speak to this part a little bit more. So one question we got, Courtney, was, is May through July still a time to connect schools and candidates? Is it still a time where the hiring season is really going on?
Absolutely. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier on, and it's, this year specifically, we've seen a lot of late openings. So we're still seeing openings every day right now, end of April. So if you think about that, searches take anywhere from, I'd say the fastest I've seen is a week to, maybe 2 months is average. So based on all the new jobs we're seeing, and it hasn't stopped, I think it's going to continue. We're very much still in the hiring season and very actively helping schools find candidates. The good thing about searching this time of year and with school searching this time of year is that searches tend to go faster because they want them, they want to know, they want to secure the hires as soon as they can. So I think it's good and bad, right? I think it can be a nerve-wracking, just very intense time of year to search, but also things tend to happen pretty quickly.
Definitely. Looking at the last couple questions, I think that we can answer them, or I'm just reading this last one. I think, yeah, looking at the last questions, they do seem to be somewhat individual, so we can follow up with you individually. I will say, if we don't get to your question, or you don't hear from us soon, feel free to reach out, and we're always happy to answer those questions there as well. Courtney, do you have any parting notes?
Just thank you again for spending time with us today. I know that everyone is really busy and juggling a million things in our COVID world, but we are here to support you through the search, and we think of it as a partnership. So there's no such thing as over communicating. Please keep us posted, keep in touch, let us know how we can help, and we are looking forward to an exciting spring and early summer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay in touch. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. Bye.